Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Lincoln Riley, the USC Trojans get it done at home against Nebraska with by far the biggest storyline coming out of this football game. What does the quarterback look like for USC with Jayden Maiava taking over this USC offense? My personal takeaway is kind of what we expected in terms of a little bit of a roller coaster. We spent the last couple of weeks evaluating him on the film, going back to his UNLV days and say, there's a lot of stuff that you really like about this kid and what he brings to this offense at the quarterback position. But there's also some plays where they kind of make you scratch your head. We got the full Jayden Maiava experience. We knew it was going to be must-watch television. We weren't sure which way it was going to go. But I think at the end of the day, two things really stand out to me, especially going back and watching the game back. One, this kid's a playmaker. Like, he can do things within this USC offense that you just couldn't ask Miller Moss to do. And I think most importantly, like, USC wins the football game. And that's a conversation that I don't think people have enough when you're evaluating quarterbacks. Look, Miller Moss was solid for USC. I think there's a lot of Power 4 teams across the country that would take Miller Moss as their starting quarterback. But at the end of the day, like, you just weren't winning football games. And that kind of falls at the quarterback spot from a large part. Jayden comes in, and yeah, he made some mistakes that you want to see get cleaned up, but he won the football game for USC. I think that matters, and it matters in a big way. A lot to take away and a lot to be excited about in terms of the development of this kid at the quarterback spot. Now, before we get into it, as always, to the USC fans, one, I can't thank y'all enough for rocking with the boys. Y'all know this is a program I like talking about. The amount of support y'all continue to show to the fellas, it means the world. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, would love to hear some of your takeaways in the comment section, specifically when it comes to evaluating the quarterback play. We're going to do a little bit of a film study coming up later this week as I kind of watch the game back a couple more times. Without further ado, let's get into this one. I think the biggest takeaway, roller coaster of a ride when you're rocking with Jayden at quarterback. Now, this is the talking point for Jayden moving forward. And this kind of determines if Jayden's going to be a quarterback for USC that wins a lot of football games is, hey, can we continue to see those highs of him as a playmaker? I mean, there was a play where he stiff arms MJ Sherman off his back foot, pushes it to Deuce Robinson. Those plays, that play's going for a sack with Miller Moss at quarterback. It ends up being an explosive play that helps USC win this football game. Can you maintain those highs with Jayden and kind of eliminate the lows, like the fumble and the pick six to Sayre Wright? If you can do that, and he can kind of walk that line a little bit better in terms of being a difference maker, a game changer at the quarterback position, but also not putting the ball in harm's way, that kid is going to be dangerous at the quarterback spot. So at the end of the day, it comes down to how well can he walk that line as he continues to mature as a young quarterback. And if he gets better at walking that line, this kid is going to run this Lincoln Riley offense exceptionally well over the next couple of weeks and really over the next couple of years for USC. Now, number two, playmaker. And this is by far my biggest takeaway. And I think by far the biggest reason to be excited to see Jayden take over this offense. You go back to Miller Moss running this USC offense over the first couple of weeks and really the majority of the portion of the 2024 season. Miller Moss was solid, could make a lot of throws. It was really accurate with the football, short, intermediate stuff he was pretty dang good at. Again, Miller Moss, a solid quarterback that a lot of Power 4 teams would take, but he wasn't really a difference maker. He wasn't really a playmaker. There were so many times in this football game where Jayden goes out and makes a play for this USC offense. One of the biggest storylines is, hey, USC only gave up 1 sack and 5 tackles for loss. And yeah, I think that's partially because that offensive line is starting to play better football. But I think it's secondly, Jayden is so hard to bring down at the quarterback spot. Miller Moss, not really much freelance ability. He's not a great athlete. He's not a big athlete, kind of easy to take down in the pocket. Can't really get outside the pocket and extend plays. As a result, you saw USC take a lot of negative plays and take a lot of sacks. For Jayden, you didn't see that many negative plays because he's so hard to deal with and keep in the pocket with how big and athletic he is. So he's a playmaker at the quarterback spot. And then you see some throws that, again, you can't teach that type of arm. Now, again, I go back to that one where he stiff arms 255-pound MJ Sherman at that outside linebacker spot, off his back foot, pushes it to Deuce Robinson. Again, you didn't see those plays from Miller Moss. And one of those attributes that every single quarterback that's had a ton of success within this USC offense has had is that playmaking ability. Whether it's Caleb Williams, whether it's Kyler Murray, whether it's Baker Mayfield, there's a common characteristic with quarterbacks that excel under Lincoln Riley, that playmaking characteristic that's hard to kind of describe, but you kind of know it when you see it. That's what you saw from Jayden at portions in this football game. And that's a damn good Nebraska defense. I know they got their struggles on offense, but putting up 450 yards, 28 points, running the ball for 185 yards, it's a really good performance from this USC offense. I think number three, and I think what's arguably so much more helpful for USC, especially in 2024, Jayden allows you to run the football more effectively. And we kind of said this heading into the matchup. Hey, with Jayden at quarterback, having a little bit more of a dual threat quarterback at the helm, is Lincoln Riley going to lean into the run game a little bit more? Something we've been all banging the table for throughout the 2024 season. This USC team has run the football phenomenally well. The biggest problem is they don't run the football that often. You saw Lincoln Riley with a quarterback like Jayden say, hey, we become a lot harder to stop in the run game with Jayden at quarterback. Let's go run the football more. This was as balanced as we've seen this USC offense look. Now, I think you had, 35 passing attempts and 32 rushing attacks, almost a 50-50 split. That's kind of what you want if you're USC, and they kind of built the offense off of the run game, which we haven't really seen USC do. And they kind of want to build their offense off their passing attack, but we all kind of knew that the strength of this USC team right now is running the football. You got one of the best backs in the country, by the way, in Woody Marks, with an offensive line that, although has struggled at points in pass protection, can move bodies off the line of scrimmage and really run the football. Like that's the identity of this team. And you saw Lincoln Riley kind of pivot to leaning into that identity with Jayden at quarterback. Now, what Jayden does in the run game, one, he's a guy that can run the football himself. We saw that plenty. I think more importantly, on a lot of those read option plays, you're freezing that backside edge rusher and backside linebacker because you got to respect what Jayden can do pulling that football and getting to the perimeter. With Miller Moss, you couldn't. You didn't really freeze those backside edge rushers. He didn't freeze the backside linebackers because I don't think there was a defense that was afraid of Miller Moss hurting them with the legs. This Nebraska defense was. And when you give Woody Marks that extra space to operate, this kid is – we knew Woody Marks was good. I thought this was probably the best game we've seen from Woody Marks in terms of how explosive he is. Like when he gets to the second level, like when he wants to turn it up and make people miss, nobody runs harder and more elusive than Woody Marks that you've seen. He's emerging to be one of the best backs, not only in the Big Ten, but in the country. Not even talking about what he can do catching the football out of the backfield. I thought USC, Jayden at quarterback, I guess you'd say, he allowed USC to lean into their strengths more on offense. I think that was a big storyline in terms of winning this football game. Number four, and I think was arguably the biggest question we had with Jayden, was the command of the offense. We all know this kid can make plays. I don't think we were surprised, quite frankly. We weren't surprised when we saw the pick six, but we also weren't surprised to see him make some of those high-level throws that we saw as well. But his command of the offense, especially after the first quarter, I think it was a little choppy before the first two drives. It really started to settle in and kind of hit the stuff he needed to hit. We know he can make the flashy splash plays, but can you do some of the small stuff right? I thought Jayden did a really good job doing that as well, especially in the last three quarters of this football game. You saw a lot of balance in terms of not only balance in terms of the run pass split, but you saw balance in terms of everybody getting involved. Zachariah Branch, Deuce Robinson, and Woody Marks, and some of the tight ends. This was about as healthy and balanced as you've seen this USC offense look, which I think is a really big storyline. So overall, if we're going to grade it out, I'll say B+, because one, you won the football game. I think number two, you were a difference maker at the quarterback spot. The only reason you're not getting an A is that you can't throw a pick six, you can't fumble and give Nebraska a short field. Outside of some of the ugly plays, like you saw a lot of good stuff from Jayden. I think most importantly, you saw stuff that you could build off of heading into the back half of 2024 and into 2025. Now, I want to give a couple other shout-outs. We spent the first 10 minutes talking about Jayden, which I think is the biggest storyline. Offensive line. That's a really good Nebraska front seven. And 1 sack, 5 tackles for loss, not really allowing negative plays, keeping Jayden pretty clean. Really, really impressive, especially Elijah Page. Elijah Page took his lumps early as a redshirt freshman, specifically against Wisconsin, Michigan game. Elijah Page has been nails over the back half to kind of start November. And I think if you're USC kind of building out, looking forward to 2025, you got your stalwart left tackle, which I think is massive. Like that's a position that's hard to address in the transfer portal. USC is not going to have to address it because they got a guy in Elijah Page. But I think also the offensive line in general is playing a lot better football. Second shout out, Deuce Robinson. He is starting to get loose, and we've seen the flashes of Deuce. You're starting to see him put it together a little bit more consistently. I'd also shout out Zachariah Branch, who just hasn't looked right. And I don't think it's an injury, just not as electric as we remember as that true freshman. You kind of saw him get back to when he gets the football in space, you kind of holding your breath, which I think is huge because this kid is special when he's playing his best football. I think on the defensive side of the football, Cam Fountain played, I think, 50 snaps in this football game and gave you, I think it got the 39 snaps. Gave you really good reps as a true freshman. And again, this is a USC defense that's going through a lot of injuries. They are not very healthy. Getting some guys, some young guys, some opportunity to show what they can do and develop. I think Cam Fountain's one of those guys that he's not necessarily lighting up the box score, but he's doing a lot of the small stuff right. He's taking on blocks, getting off blocks, making some plays. Jalen Smith is nails at cornerback. I mean, Jalen Smith, not only the pick, but just there's never separation getting created when Jalen Smith's in coverage. I think that was a really big takeaway. I thought the linebackers were actually pretty damn good fitting the run as well. If there's one thing you want to see USC continue to improve on, and that is getting after the passer, I thought that Nebraska offensive line, I don't think it's a great unit. I think you want it to impact Dylan a little bit more in the pocket. With all the injuries, I don't know if that gets much better. That's definitely a thing that I think USC will address in the transfer portal. But I thought, I mean, again, you look at the defense and say they gave up a pick six, but outside of that, 13 points, touchdown, 2 field goals. Take that performance every single day of the week. You only gave up 13 points on the defensive side of the football. Damn good performance. I think there's a lot to be excited about. We'll see. I think what's most exciting is just seeing this kid get better running the offense. I think we're going to see that. And I think at the end of the year, we're going to have a conversation of, hey, can Jayden be the guy that can be special for this USC offense in 2025? Hassan Longstreet was also in attendance, which is worth noting. We'll talk about that a little later on in the week. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Again, if y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate y'all. And we'll talk to you guys later.